from Tafshin Mem Daled. It's actually a Yechidus that the Sadigurer Rebbe came to the Rebbe exactly 40 years ago today. Tesvav Tevis Tafshin Mem Daled. And they were discussing different topics. One of the topics they touched upon is the idea of simcha and being rich and having comfort even in the time of Gullus. We're going to be skipping around a lot. We're going to be going through different excerpts. Sometimes in the middle of the conversation there's pieces from the Sadigurer Rebbe. I'm going to skip over those parts. Just going to go into the pieces that the Rebbe talks about. Let's go all the way to the bottom of the page, where it starts saying...
It's a sikha to everyone, or it's a sikha of a Yechidus
It's a Yechidus with the Sadigurer Rebbe, but it was recorded. So it was in the Rebbe's room, but it was still made public
so
and
it's
so
given
on.
over as a sikha. Okay. Thank you.
So it says over here that the Rebbe said, "Kvoitus Admar Shlita, Be'inyan Bikesh Yaakov Leisha B'Shalva," concerning what it says in Parshas Vayeshev that Yaakov wanted to sit in calmness, and then what happened? So Kafetz Olav Rugzei Shaleitzav, that the upset of Yosef, pounced upon him. That and Hashem said it's not enough that tzaddikim have Olam Haba; they also want Olam Hazeh. She's kartamata. The Rebbe says that the Sadigurer Rebbe mentioned that just previously. So the Rebbe says a very important point. Yeshnei davar temua b'yoser. There's something that's really a very big wonder about that statement. Hayitachen, does it make sense? How can this be? Since Yaakov Avinu davened and asked from Hashem to be calm, to have a calm, quiet life. Not only was his request not fulfilled, he was also punished on his very request by the fact that the anger of Yosef jumped upon him. The upset of Yosef jumped upon him. What was so terrible that Yaakov wanted to have a calm, quiet life? L'chura, seemingly, adrab, just the opposite. Mitzvah sase, the Rambam says, it's a mitzvah sase. It's a mitzvah min haTorah. It's one of the 613 mitzvahs. Sheyehei Adam shoyel tzrachav shehu tzarich lahem, that a person should ask from Hashem the needs that he needs. This is the Rambam Reishis Chutfil. The Rambam writes this at the beginning of the laws of davening. So therefore, just like every ordinary Yid is entitled to ask and desire and want to have his needs met, so what, is Yaakov any worse? Even if we'll say that Yaakov Avinu didn't just request, he asked and he insisted and he begged more than necessary. Is this a reason to punish him with a severe punishment until the upset of Yosef took hold of him? A totally new problem. Skip the parentheses. So the Rebbe says in the second paragraph, we can say the explanation is as follows. When Yaakov Avinu asked a particular request from Hashem, we must say that this request was actually fulfilled. It is not appropriate to say that the request of a tzaddik will not, heaven forbid, be fulfilled. And it's actually true that in the final 17 years, Yoshev Yaakovin B'Shalva, he actually did settle in a calm way. like it's explained in the commentary of the Balaturim, Void Meforshim and other commentaries all Posik, and what it says in the Posik, Vayichi Yaakov Beret Mitzrayim Shvayis Rishona, that Yaakov lived in the land of Mitzrayim 17 years. Sheyud Zayin Hashonim Shahoya Beret Mitzrayim, that the 17 years that Yaakov Avinu lived in the land of Mitzrayim, Hayu Ba'ofen Shel Vayichi, they were in such a way that he lived it. Chaim B'Shleimusam, a fully fulfilling life, leloidaigus v'tzares chulu, without any worries, without any concerns, without any problems. Like it's also understood in the simple reading of the text that we had in Parshas Miketz. It says al posik v'kel shindal yud yiton lochem rachmin. When Yaakov Avinu sent off the Shvatim to go ahead and get food from Mitzrayim, he said that Hashem, by the name of Shindal Yud, should give before you mercy in the eyes of the Egyptian viceroy. Mefarish Rashi, so Rashi explains what's the meaning of using the name Shindal Yud over here. So we know that the name Shindal Yud, the Chazal say it's Misha Amar Lo Olam Dai. Shindal Yud could be divided, Sha'amar Dai. He said enough to the world. In other words, he gave a limit to the world. So that very same Hashem that placed a limit on the world, Yaakov Avinu was saying, Yoimar Dai L'Tzaroisai. He should finally say enough to my tzaros, Yaakov Avinu said. Shaloi Shakatati Menuroi, I didn't have calmness from my youth. I had Tzaras Lavan, the problems of Lavan, Tzaras Esav, the problems of Esav, Tzaras Rachel, the problems with Rachel, Tzaras Dinah, the problems with Dinah, Tzaras Yosef, B'chulu, and the problems of Yosef. And now the Rebbe is going to go on that it even started before all of that. Va'ad Kidei Kach, to such a degree, Sha'oid Lefnei Leidasi, even before his birth, Haya Kvar Amura, the V'yasroit Za'abonim Bekirba, there was already the event that the children were like struggling within Rivka, Yaakov and Esav, misroitetzim umerivim chulu. They were struggling and arguing. Skip the parentheses. That's why when Pari asked Yaakov, how many years is your life? How old are you? Which the meaning behind this question was, was bist du az etzeknecht? Why do you seem to be like so worn out, so completely like not a person of your age? Anula Yaakov responded, Yimei Shnei Megurai, the days of my years of my life or of my living is Shloishim As Shana, was 130 years. Me'at v'roim Yimei Shnei Chai, few and bad were the days of the years of my life. That was up till him coming to Mitzrayim. As opposed to when he came to Mitzrayim, Yosef settled him in the most comfortable land. Goshen was the most choicest place of Mitzrayim. And he supported him, and he made sure that he had everything he would be lacking in a comfortable way. So that Yaakov Avinu actually was fulfilled his request. He actually was sitting in a calm and comfortable way. Without any concerns, without any troubles, without any confusion. He didn't even have to worry about Esav. Esav was far away from Egypt. That's what it means, that Yaakov wanted to sit calmly, so it jumped upon him the upset of Yosef. Not that he wanted one thing and Hashem did another thing. No, the very fulfillment of his request was through the problem with Yosef. The fulfillment of the request of Yaakov Avinu to sit in calmness. It's through the upset of Yosef jumped upon him, as a result of the whole problem with Yosef. It came about that Yaakov descended to Mitzrayim. Now he finally was fulfilled that he was able to sit 17 years, live the most comfortable life. This is also connected with what you said. He's addressing this to the Sadigurer Rebbe. It's not enough that what's prepared for them in the world to come. Hashem is not saying it's not enough for you, Olam Haba. You need Olam Haza. No, it means that Hashem agreed with him. Not enough is Olam Haba, but they should also get Olam Haza. Yaakov wanted to be settled and sitting calmly. Hashem Yisbarach agreed to this request. Why did he agree? Because it's insufficient that they're going to get the world to come. And they have to also have that they should sit calmly in this world. This request was fulfilled through the fact that the whole upset with Yosef came about. Then the Rebbe goes on and says an amazing thing. These 17 best years is calculated as part of the Golus. Avraham Avinu was said, Yidden will be in Golus 400 years. They were actually in Golus 210 years. But even, not just the Golus of the 400 years, but even the actual 210 years of Golus included these very best years that Yaakov Avinu was in Mitzrayim. He says in Yud, the bottom of the page, again, the Rebbe continues, we can add to this, according to what the Chazal say in Second Shabbos, Yaakov Avinu could have been brought down to Egypt in chains, like a prisoner. Ella, but rather, instead of being led down to Egypt in chains, his merit stood him in good stead. And his descent to Mitzrayim was in a way of honors even given to a king. That's how he was brought down to Egypt. Next paragraph. Though Yaakov Avinu should have come down to Egypt in iron chains, why would he have come down to Egypt in iron chains? As a result of what Hashem told Avraham Avinu, the Bris Ben Absadim, because of the decree that Hashem revealed to Avraham Avinu during the covenant of the parts, and he said that they will enslave them and they will make them suffer. So that's why Yaakov would have had to have gone down to Egypt. Afal became, despite that Yaakov Avinu should have been led down in chains, like you have any enslavement. That's how it works. The slaves are brought to their place of enslavement with chains. Still in all b'makim yirida shal barzel, instead of descending with chains of iron, shetoichna in shal golus. What does it mean, iron chains? The concept of exile. Yaakov merited to live in the land of Mitzrayim out of calmness and out of a state of quietude. It's in the most comfortable place in the land. And alongside with this, of being in the most comfortable type of situation, these 17 years that Yaakov was in Mitzrayim was calculated within the 210 years, Keminyan Redu, like the numerical equivalent of the word Redu, that means descend, shall Golus v'shiv Mitzrayim. This was included in the 210 years of the exile and the enslavement of Egypt. Aleim Namar, concerning this it says, Vavodim v'inu oisam, that they enslaved them and they made them suffer. The calculation of 400 years that Avraham Avinu was told that your children will be enslaved is calculated from when Yitzchak was born, like Rashi says. And the calculation of 210 years began from when Yaakov descended to Egypt while he was 130 years. And the enslavement in Egypt began only after the generation of Yaakov and his children. It says that as long as any one of Yaakov's children was alive, as long as any one of the Shvatim was alive, none of the enslavement began. So it wasn't just that Yaakov Avinu's life was not being enslaved while being included in the 210 years, but even all of his children's lives were included in the 210 years. Ubefrat, and especially Iker Kushya Shibud, the main and primary difficult time of the enslavement, is Shmoinim v'Shei Shonim Mishanolda Miriam. It's the 86 years from when Miriam was born until they left Egypt. B'meshech Pei Vav, it's for 86. B'gematria Lakim Shonim Achronis the Gols Mitzrayim. It's the 86 final years of the exile of Mitzrayim. Let's go back to what we started with. Avol kasher Yaakov Avinu haya b'Mitzrayim. When Yaakov Avinu was in Mitzrayim, Yosher b'meitav haaretz. He was in the most comfortable place in the land. V'yeshiva zu haisa ba'ifin d'vayachazu ba. And the way he was settled was in the way that he held on to it. Lashon achuza. That they were settled in it. This was theirs. It wasn't just they were guests. Ba'ifin shal manucha v'shalva, in a calm and peaceful manner. Behesam l'bakashase shal Yaakov Avinu, appropriate to and corresponding to the request of Yaakov Avinu, leisha b'shalva gam b'olam hazeh, to be comfortable and quiet and calm also in this world. Uka'amr, like we said, shanim elu shal yeshiva b'shalva, that these years of sitting settled him b'minyan redushan l'gos Mitzrayim. It comes down into the 210 years of the exile of Mitzrayim. Then let's skip the next paragraph to the second paragraph from the bottom. And the Rebbe said that the Rebbe is responding to something that the Sadigurer Rebbe said, that the Geula will come with iron chains if Yidden do not really agree. So the Rebbe says, the second paragraph from the bottom, the idea of iron chains, we already fulfilled that obligation according to all opinions. Now we can and Yidden need to become redeemed and to come to Eretz Yisrael on clouds of heaven, not through Chas v'Sholom iron chains. So now we're going to skip to further part in this conversation. There's a lot of different other topics that they went on to, and part of the things was the Rebbe started talking about the necessity of Mifsat Tefillin, and he started explaining different questions that people challenged Mifsat Tefillin, and he was answering those questions. And then on the bottom of the page, 2 paragraphs in the bottom, the Rebbe's focus is how we have to go about Miftzoim, and that's in the way of Simcha. Again, Tezayin, Behemshach La'anal, in continuation what we spoke about earlier, in Ikasha Medubar, this mitzvah tefillin, when we're speaking about the mitzvah of tefillin. And it's not just mitzvah tefillin the Rebbe is going to explain. And similar to this in all other matters of mitzvahim, Madgish Hineni, I am emphasizing she'inyan zeh tzarech lismtech simcha davke. This idea has to be done out of joy. V'zeh klal b'chol hapulos mazulas. This is a rule in all activities with another. Lageshes elov b'tech tnua shel simcha, to approach another in an approach of joy, b'darchei noyam, b'darchei shalom, in a pleasing manner, in a peaceful manner. K'visharoyim b'muchash, like we see with our own senses. When you approach a Yid that never put on tefillin, which is called in Chazal karkaftad leimonach tefillin, a skull that didn't have tefillin on it, Why didn't he put on film? Because he's like a child imprisoned amongst the nations. And you want to affect him. You want to influence him to put on tefillin. The only approach to do so, to get someone that never put on tefillin before to put on tefillin, is kasher nigoshim eilov mitach tnuah shel simcha. It's when you approach him with a joyous manner, im chiyuch al sfasayim, with a smile on your lips. Mashenkim nigoshim b'sever panu chamuris, as opposed to if you approach him in a very severe countenance, shal zapuli b'ofen hafchi, then the effect is the opposite of what you're trying to do. Ein tzoyrich berayis v'oichachas sha'aderech ha'yechida lifal al zul si b'darchi noim b'darchi shalom. We do not need proofs and arayas and all types of ways of demonstrating this, that the only way to influence another is in a pleasant manner, in a peaceful manner. Less man the polik. There's no one that argues that is the way to influence another Yid these days. And those that try to still argue and debate the approach and say that no, we got to go with a stern way. Many years already passed that our approach is to influence another's out of simcha. We could point on many addresses of Jews that became close to Yiddishkeit, putting on tefillin, etc. When you turn to these Jews and you ask them, how did you become close to Yiddishkeit? So definitely you will not have to argue and debate this point anymore, because it will be quite evident from interviewing these people that the way they became close to Yiddishkeit was because they were approached with joy. Let's skip over though in the Gemara we find the idea of joy concerning the mitzvah of bris milah, kol mitzvah shekibla aleim besimcha kein milah, the chassis also neichal imrasecha, every mitzvah they accepted upon them with joy, like bris milah. It says they bring a raya from a pasuk. It says in Tillim that I rejoice on your sayings. It's going on milah. We don't find tefillin associated in the Gemara with simcha. So the Rebbe says, true, the Gemara doesn't say that. Therefore, it's my will to influence shagam inyan tefillin, also the idea of tefillin. Especially the mitzvah of tefillin, will be in a way of joy. So then people can ask, and who are you to come up with this? To those that ask, where do we find the idea of simcha concerning the mitzvah of tefillin? The response is very simple. The fulfillment of all Torah mitzvahs has to be out of joy. Like it says, that you served Hashem your God with joy and gladness of heart. Let's skip over the paragraph to the next paragraph, Yud Zayin. Admar Shlita says, in continuation, what we spoke about earlier about joy, being joyous in the service of Hashem. Here there is a novelty of the Baal Shem Tov. As it's known, in earlier generations prior to the Baal Shem Tov, the order of those that wanted to become extra close to Hashem was an order of fasting and other types of afflictions. And the Baal Shem Tov was mechadish. The Baal Shem Tov brought a new approach that the avoid has to be specifically out of joy. My father-in-law, in other words, the Sadigurer Rebbe, related in the names of the Rabbeim preceding him about the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on the pasuk, when you will see the donkey of your enemy collapsing, you should help him out. Kisir chamoir, what does it mean you will see the donkey? Kasher tistakel be'iyun toiv, when you will look with a good examination b'chomer shalcha, in the materialism of yourself, in your physicality. Shu agufta, that's the body. Tira, you will notice, Sainacha, he's your enemy. Shu Sainas Anashami, he hates the soul. Perhaps it will arise in your mind the thought, don't help him. Don't help out the body. Rather to fight the body, like you would fight an enemy. How do you fight the body? Through afflictions and fasts, to break the coarseness of the body. Comes the Baal Shem Tov and says, not in such a way does the light of Torah rest and reside in the person. And this term, the Rebbe is going to repeat a few times throughout the next piece. Rather, you should surely help him. To refine the body, to purify the body, and not to break the body with afflictions. So the Rebbe says, in our terms, that means an approach of joy. This means to say, the idea of joy has to be not only in certain set times. For example, Simchas Yom Tov, when we're rejoicing in Yom Tov, or even Simchas Shel Mitzvah, when we're doing a mitzvah, then we have to be joyous. All matters of service of Hashem has to be out of the joy of the body. Let's go on, skip over to the next page. Let's go to the third paragraph on the page. Isa b'Gemara. Kol ha'yoshev b'tainis nikra choyte. Whoever sits in fasts that are not obligatory fasts, he's called a sinner. When, if his body cannot handle these fasts and he feels that he needs to, for spiritual reasons, fast, but it weakens him, so then he is considered a sinner. He's not considered doing something religious. Because he cannot handle the fast. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya in the Ger Satshuva, in the times of the Gemara we find many Tanoim and Amaroim Shaldover Kalhoim Misanim Tainis Harimoid. For the most slightest infraction, part of their tshuva, they would go through many fasts. There was a person that didn't protest when someone did not follow the words of the Chachamim, and when the afterwards fasted so much that his teeth became dark from the fast. I guess he didn't have enough nutrition. He got, I think it's called scurvy or whatever. So he says, V'gam oz. The Alter Rebbe goes on and says, even then, in the times of the Gemara, they did not fast in such a manner, only the healthy ones. The that their soul could take the suffering, meaning they can handle it without becoming weak. So the Alter Rebbe goes on and says, as opposed to our generations, since a person could come to illness or some other health issue, it's prohibited for a person to increase in fast. Since the Torah commands, you should guard your souls, your lives very much. And then he continues, how much more so someone that studies Torah, that not only does he sin by damaging his body, but he's a double sinner, and he's doubly punished for fasting when he can't take it, because the weakness of the fast, he cannot be involved in Torah the way it's supposed to be. a state of a weakened body, disturbs to our understanding and comprehension in Torah. It also disturbs our fulfilling the mitzvahs in a passionate way, in an energetic way. Like it says, Heverotz l'mitzvah, you have to run to a mitzvah. If a person is weakened with a fast, he can barely walk to do the mitzvah, etc. While Pisa moving according to this, it's understood. In these generations, it's prohibited to be involved in fasts and afflictions, except for those fasts that one is obligated according to Shulchan Aruch. So now the Rebbe says, the Rebbe is going to add a very important point. This idea is not just plan B. Ideally, we should fast. Since we can't fast, no, we have to make do without fasting. The Rebbe is going to explain the very fact that we cannot fast. That means that this is the way for the light of Hashem to come down, without the fast. And if a person fasts, it interferes with the light of Hashem. So that's the Rebbe skipped to the next paragraph, where it says, quite just Admar Shlita. But the novelty and unique idea of the Baal Shem Tov is not only should be and these days we can't be involved in an order of a service of fasts and afflictions because there is no choice. Like we said, it's just plan B. We can't do it. Ela adrab, just the opposite. The manner of service and a way of afflictions and fasts, not in such a manner does the light of Hashem reside. But rather in a way that you must assist him. Then there's also a common complaint. How can you say such a thing? Since we find in the Arizal's writings many ideas of afflictions and fasts, he talks over there about different types of fasts that a person has to do when he does this wrong, when he does that wrong. How can we say that these days our avodah changes? So he says, the Rebbe says that it's not about a change in the Torah. It is Torah itself tells you that there are certain times you can't fast. So let's skip over to the next paragraph. Koloimar. It's not about that the natures of people change, which is something that Sadigurer Rebbe said right before this piece. We find this in many different things, that there are times that we're supposed to do certain things and times other things don't apply. Since the Torah itself establishes this change, so this is not considered a change in the Torah. In other words, Torah establishes that only when you're healthy are you allowed to fast. Those generations that you're not healthy, you're not allowed to fast. It's not that anybody's making a change in the Torah. These are different conditions. And the Rebbe gives a very simple example. For example, Yom HaShabbos Asur B'asiyas Malach. The day of Shabbos, one is prohibited to do work. As opposed to the weekdays, it says Hashem should bench you in all that you do. Like it's brought down in the Mechilta, the Medrash, and Aseres HaDibros. Where it says that 6 days you should work, this is a positive commandment. It's a mitzvah to work. Could you say that the times changed? And Shabbos it's this way, and during the weekdays it's a different way. No, this is not even a question. This is not even a question. This change itself was something that Torah established. Torah said you're only supposed to cease from work on Shabbos. And Torah said you're only supposed to work on 6 days of the week. It's not talking, it's apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. The same thing when it comes to the idea that the Arizal writes about fasting for certain things that you did wrong, and nowadays we don't do it. It's because this was an established rule in the Torah that when there are difficulties to fast, you're not supposed to fast, and that's not the means for becoming close to Hashem. So too it's understood in our situation. Torah establishes already initially the tiniest that fasts and afflictions do not apply in our days since the generations were weakened. The novelty is about the Baal Shem Tov's Chiddush, the tiniest v'sigufim eina haderech sheba yishkenai Hashem. How does the Baal Shem Tov say that fasts and afflictions is not the way that Hashem's light resides? The Lechura seemingly since we find in many places that it speaks over there about the order of our service in a way, like we said from the Arizal or the times of the Gemara, in a way of fasts and afflictions. How do we say that these days we negate and we exclude this entire approach of avodah of fasts and afflictions? And the response to this is the very fact that the natures of human beings was changed. In earlier generations, we could handle the fast. As opposed to these generations, we cannot. Surely there's a lesson from this in the service of a person to his master. Since the generations became weaker, this itself is a proof. This, Hashem's will at present is that now our avodah should be not in the way of afflictions and fasts. Rather, that the body should rejoice. This is where the fasts and the not fasts comes into our whole discussion. We're talking about simcha. When a person is fasting, their body is definitely not in the state of simcha. The point is, the body has to be as well in the state of simcha. Therefore, Hashem arranged that it should be that the weakness of his generation, so it should be established the ruling according to Shulchan Aruch that one is prohibited to be involved in fast and afflictions. And then out of necessity, the service will be out of the joy of the body. In other words, like this. It's not that, like we said before, it's just plan B, but rather Hashem wanted us to reach now a stage where our body rejoices in the service of Hashem. Because Hashem wanted us to reach a stage of our body rejoicing in the service of Hashem, He made our bodies weaker that it cannot fast, and now that forces us that the way it's going to serve Hashem is with the joy of our body. Okay, we're going to skip over to the bottom of the page, 3 lines from the bottom, Ois Yud Ches. So he says, Ha'amr L'il, what we spoke about earlier, these days. The avodah has to be out of the joy of the body. It expresses itself also in the fact it's demanded a state and situation of calmness, of peace, to be settled in a calm way, literally in this world to have an easy life, until actually having comfort in all physical matters in the literal physical sense. There are those that think that They do not agree, they do not accept that in the time of Golus, Yidden have to be in a state of comfort. The Rebbe says, when I once spoke with Jews that said that Yidden and Golus should not be comfortable, the Rebbe said, I told them, what does it bother you that Yidden will be rich? And to their complaint, it's something that has to do with the physical. What are we doing with the physical? Even more than that. Inyan shel chumrius, it's even worse than the physical. It's coarseness, materialism. Ubefrat bar sabris, especially in the United States. So the Rebbe says a very strong distinction we have to make. When a person's talking about their own gashmias or someone else's gashmias. The response to this is simply concerning a person's own gashmias. Here he has to say this, to say, do I want to have gashmias? Do I not want to have gashmias? He can choose to put the gashmias aside. When it comes to the physical matters of a fellow, Torah says that the mitzvah of tzedakah is to give him whatever he's lacking. The explanation, whatever is lacking, means if a person, let's say, was used to having a chauffeured limousine, you have to supply him with that. If he was accustomed to ride on a horse and having a servant run before him to clear the way, and you are capable of doing so, you have to give it to him. You don't say gashmias, chumrias. No. When it comes to someone else, part of my mitzvah of tzedakah is to ensure he has his full gashmias. And here the Rebbe is going to bring a very interesting Gemara in Yerushalmi. It could be super Yerushalmi, it's related in the Gemara Yerushalmi. Abba Barba Yoav L'Shmuel B'rei Pritin D'Yei Polig L'Maskene. Abba Barba gave to Shmuel, his son, coins to give out to poor people. Nafak, he went out. V'ashkechad Miskun, he found a poor person, Achal Kupa Basar B'Shasi Chamer Yain. He saw him eating meat and drinking wine. So he didn't want to give that person any money. He's poor, but he's eating meat and wine. I should go ahead and support his meat and wine. If he'd be eating bread and water, that's something else. He went back into Ba'amar Kame Avui, and he told his father about it. He doesn't want to give him tzedakah, because he sees that person is eating meat and drinking wine. What did his father say? Give him even more. Don't give him what you would give to an ordinary poor person that you don't see him drinking wine and eating meat. You have to give him according to what his measure is, according to what he's accustomed to. The fact that even when he's poor, he's drinking wine and eating meat, obviously that's what he's accustomed to. So you can't give him what you give an ordinary poor person. You have to give him more according to what he's accustomed to. So that's the first point that the Rebbe said about the importance of ensuring that Yidden have Gashmis. And that's why the Rebbe says, I insist that Yidden, even while they're being in Golus, they should have Gashmis and it should be comfortable in all things in the literal sense. Then the Rebbe adds another aspect to this. V'oid v'ikr, third paragraph. In addition to this, that a person has a responsibility to supply another person their needs, even if it means a chauffeured limousine. Li ichpas, the Rebbe says, you know what concerns me, what bothers me? She Yehudim yekaimu Torah mitzvahs. That's what I'm interested in, the Rebbe says. I'm interested in Yidden doing Torah mitzvahs. Since we see in actuality that when a person is comfortably physically, that brings to fulfilling Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, the Rebbe says, so therefore we need to put an effort that Yidden shall be in a comfortable state until they literally are rich. There's a rule in the Gemara, one does not derive halacha from just a discussion and so on until a person is told, this is halacha l'maisa, this is halacha what you're supposed to do. So the Rebbe says, what do we see halacha l'maisa when it comes to money and riches and comfort? We see in actuality, when a Yid finds himself in a state of physical comfort, it's easier to bring him closer to Torah mitzvahs. A simple example of this is when you speak with a Yid about setting aside times for Torah learning. When his physical state is in the way of comfort, he has time available to devote to Torah study. As opposed to if he's very much concerned and troubled about matters of making a living. Because the state is not in the way of comfort. So too, if you're trying to influence someone that's not keeping Shabbos, it's much easier to influence him if he doesn't have to worry about making a living. And so too concerning other matters of Torah and mitzvahs. There is such a concept that Yidden became fat, they became too comfortable, and they rebelled. But the Rebbe says we don't have to be concerned about this. I will be in New York. These days we see in actuality in New York, etc. When we come to Yid and we tell him, act and fulfill the will of the Eibishter, and that will be easier for you in the physical, then you will have literal riches, all of the kind Torah mitzvahs. So this affects him to do Torah mitzvahs. So therefore, I want Yidden to be comfortable, and this will add in their Torah mitzvahs. That's the Rebbe saying. Let's skip over to, there's a whole this discussion back and forth that the Sadigurer brings stories with his family, whatever. And then he says, the bottom of this page, it says, second paragraph from the bottom. Yeshne Piskum, there is an expression, Shalitoy, Litvak, Tzarech Lisper, Volimnois, Bepoil Mamish, Yesh Biyode, Kach Vakach. A Litvak, there was a lot of like cute sayings that they had in Europe that the people said about Hungarians like this, and they said about Litvaks like that, and they said about Galicianer like this, and Romanish are like that. So what they used to say about a Litvak is very straight and he needs to count it. When you give him something, he needs to count it out, every single dollar and whatever. This was actually said about the Alter Rebbe when he came to the Mezritcher Magid. The other Talmidim of the Mezritcher Magid called him the Litvak, because he came from Lithuania. And they said about him also, he needs to count it out. What's it mean he needs to count it out? They were talking about a spiritual thing. The difference between the Alter Rebbe and the other students of the Mezritcher Magid was he didn't just hear and accept his Rebbe, what his Rebbe said. He wanted to count it. That the matter should come down in his own intellect and his own understanding. So the Rebbe connects it with the whole idea that the Rebbe is saying over here about riches by every Yid and comfort. So he says, in such a way has to be the way his students are acting. Every single Yid, everything needs to be counted out. ובענייננו in our matter שהרחבה בעניינים גשמיים תהיה באופן שיוכל לספר שיש לו כך וכך דולרים. That the comfort in physical matters should be in such a way that he could count and say he has so many and so many dollars. ולכן, because he counts out so many and so many dollars, tzarich liten meiser kach v'kach, he has to give 10% to tzedakah so much, or he has to give chaimish 20% to tzedakah kach v'kach. V'chidei sh'hameiser v'chaimish yeh godly yoiser. So the 10% or the 20% he gives to tzedakah should be even greater. Tzarich HaKadosh Baruch Hu los le'kam apam kocha, Hashem has to give him many times the amount that he gave him initially.